Chapter 43, The Trap is Set. It was Gawain who sat by her bedside as Elune slipped in and out of consciousness. The recovery was slow, agonizing while, for 3 days, Elune drifted through pain and numbness, while Gaius treated her wounds and her body fought to mend. She cried out in the night and day as her mind responded to the constant replaying of Arthur's blade. Gawain held her hand, watched how she responded to treatment, refused to leave even for Arthur's coronation. That young man loves her, Gaius told Merlin, unusually frank about a matter of the heart. As the second week drew to a close, she has one person, at least on her side. 3. Merlin told him, "You and I." Gaius nodded in agreement. When she finally stayed awake, the first thing she saw was Merlin's face, weary and soot-stained, illuminated by a single candle. The second was Gawain's, and watched as the man slipped down onto a chair next to her. His face weary from lack of sleep, his beautiful eyes twinkling with hope. But it still took another week before Elune could stay awake for a long period of time. While Merlin kept an intermittent vigil, it was enough to spot a figure in the shadows who had chosen that moment to step to her. Merlin was on his feet. "Keep your hands off her, sire," he added, when he saw it was Arthur. "Some say she is better. I think it would be fair to say she would be even better if you had not attacked her, Lord King." And Arthur retreated as quietly as he had arrived, leaving Elune and the exhausted Gawain, whose head rested on her bed, to sleep. 88,888,888. "Don't try to move," Merlin whispered, as she gasped awake. Gaius, who was awake and pottering around with the daily treatment, glanced in her direction. "You are lucky that the blade did not touch any of your organs," Gaius told her. "The king's aim has never been very good." Arthur? Elune asked, and Gawain told her of Arthur's death and Arthur's accession and coronation. He a broken bar blamed me, Elune said, taking Gawain's offered hand. "He said I killed Arthur a broken bar." She looked urgently between Gawain, Merlin and Gaius. "I did no such." "We know," Gaius told her. "Stay still. Quiet, child," he added, his hand firm on her shoulder as she gasped, clutching at the thick bandages. "May I have a minute alone with my patient?" Gaius debandaged Elune, exposing her torso to the air before smoothing on the herbal paste. She sighed at the healing pain, refusing to cry out. Gaius looked over his shoulder and looked at Merlin. "Do something useful, lad, and get some cooled boiled water." Merlin glanced at the still, and poured some into a bowl. "For a lead to drink, Merlin," he replied, exasperatedly. Gawain proffered a cup, and Merlin tried again. "There. Let her," Elune managed, when Gaius had finished treating her. He held her head up as Gawain guided the cup to her lips. "He saw it," Merlin confirmed. "He's been changed ever since, more contrite over his treatment of you, since he now knows the mercenary was sent by Morgana. She didn't care you may be implicated a broken bar. In fact, she may have planned it that way." Merlin a broken bar. Elune's mind raced, as she considered every time she helped her pass out of the castle. She's allegiance with Morgause and Senrad a broken bar. She developed her power with contact with the druids. Matthew a broken bar. Gawain looked at her, confused. Then back to Merlin. "Mordred saved Arthur's life when he fought a terrible creature," Merlin told her. "He knighted him. He's Sir Mordred now." Elune looked between Gawain and Merlin. Sir Mordred? He's your friend?" Gawain asked. "Yes," nodded Elune, her mind spinning away. "Mordred, a druid, one of Prince, King Arthur's knights, a broken bar who had been close to Morgana, broken bar who had become a terrible sorceress bent on killing Arthur and taking Camelot's throne for herself, a broken bar. A Gravania broken bar," she managed. "Arthur knows the truth now," Merlin told her. "He knows a Gravane is a traitor." Elune sank back into the pillows, a bitter laugh catching in her throat. "He's our broken bar, terribly our broken bar. A Gravane will see through him, a broken bar in an hour. That's why I need you." From the doorway and out of the shadows, stepped Arthur. He looked ravaged, exhausted, as if he hadn't slept for months. He approached the bed with tentatively, waiting for a repulsion from either Merlin or Gawain, or even Gaius, pausing halfway, as if afraid his very presence might cause her more pain. "Elund," he breathed, her name an apology. He knelt by the bed, his head bowed. "Gaius told me you might not wake. I thought I had ... I thought I'd killed the only person who truly knew me." Elund looked at him, her devotion warring with the cold memory of the courtyard, where his blade struck her, imprecisely, but with enough force to make her go down, to never get up. "You did what a king has to do, Arthur. You followed the evidence." "I followed my pride," he corrected, his voice cracking. He reached out, his fingers hovering over her hand before finally closing around it. His grip was shaking. "I did not stop to look at my uncle rationally, and did not prevent him from taking me over a broken bar. I was afraid of what you are. I was afraid of the part of you that didn't belong to me. As a prince and a knight," he clarified. "I never put my faith to anyone else," she whispered, her fingers curling weakly around his. "Not Bayard, not the Saxons, not even the Druids. I was always your warrior, you prat, even when I was lying to you." "And now a broken bar." She cleared her throat. "You are King Arthur." Arthur let out a ragged breath, pressing his forehead against the edge of the mattress. For a long moment, the silence in the room was absolute. There was only Arthur and Elund. "When do we fight?" Elund asked. "Sneered. He has attacked again, has he not?" "I can fight," she emphasized. "Not for some time yet," Gaius warned her. "If you went out today, all my hard work would be undone." But the question was not about fighting that day. It was Elund's half-disguised attempt at reaffirming her position. "When you are fit, or you will be a liability," Arthur told her. Elund closed her eyes, and dreamed of battles and glory and honor. 88,888,888. News reached the palace that Morgana's forces were moving toward the border. Agravain, sensing the time was right to lead Arthur into an ambush. "We must strike before she gathers her strength, Arthur," Agravain urged his nephew in the council chamber. "A swift blow to her vanguards will break her spirit." Arthur nodded, his face a mask of cold resolve. "I agree. We leave at dusk. Just you, myself, and a handful of my most trusted men, including Mordred," Agravain noted. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, it wasn't a knight who followed them into the woods, or at least, a knight who was meant to be there. Elund, draped in a heavy cloak to hide her bandages and braced by Merlin's secret magic to keep her upright, trailed them from the shadows. "I'll go anyway, Merlin," she had told him, so Merlin decided to go with her, at a distance. He now watched Elund as she moved with the silent, predatory grace of her mercenary days, her gritty instincts heightened by the proximity of the traitor. Knowing exactly what she must do. 88,888,888. In a clearing near the perilous lands, Agravain called a halt. The air was thick with the scent of pine and impending magic. "Where is the vanguard, uncle?" Arthur asked, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. He didn't turn around, for he sensed Agravain's answer. "They are all around us, Arthur," Agravain said, his voice shedding its noble facade for a cold, triumphant sneer. "Morgana sends her regards." "It's a pity. You could have been a great king, if only you hadn't surrounded yourself with servants and outcasts." From the tree line, a dozen of Morgana's sorcerers emerged, their eyes glowing with the fires of the old religion. "Now," Arthur roared. The trusted men threw back their cloaks, revealing themselves not as knights, but as Leon, Mordred, Percival and Gawain. At the same time, Merlin intervened, causing a shimmering wall of blue force to erupt from the trees, shielding the knights from the first wave of magic. And then, there was Elund. She stepped from the gloom behind Agravain, her heavy broadsword unsheathed, looking like a vengeful spirit, her face pale, her movements stiff but lethal. "Remember Tintagel, Agravain," she intoned, the steel of her voice matching the steel in her hand. "You said the girl from the coast stayed buried. I chose to live." Agravain spun, his face contorting in fear, lunging at her, but Elund didn't flinch. She parried his blow with a jarring force that sent a spike of agony through her wound, but she didn't stop. She drove the pommel of her sword into his jaw, sending him sprawling at Arthur's feet. Arthur stood over his uncle, the tip of Excalibur at Agravain's throat. The betrayal was complete, the truth laid bare in the cold moonlight. "You killed my mother's peace," Arthur said, his voice like iron. "You tried to prevent me becoming king and instead put Morgana in my place. There is no mercy for you, Agravain." It was over. As the knights dealt with the remaining sorcerers, Arthur looked at Elund. She was swaying, her strength finally failing as the adrenaline ebbed. He moved faster than she could fall, catching her in his arms and pulling her close to his chest. "I've got you," he whispered into her hair. "I've got you." If there had been a moment, then would have been the moment. The girl who had fought for him unconditionally, but had never compromised her own self. But she had told her to look to Gwen, and he had, and they had come to an accord, which would conclude the following morning. Now, though, the threat of Agravain was over, but as he looked toward the north, he could see the faint, magical glow of Morgana's encampment. The war was coming. "We have to get back," Elund murmured, her head resting against his armor for a moment as Gwen looked at them both together. "Mordred ... he's with her now, Arthur. I can feel him a broken bargain." "Let him come," Arthur said, his jaw set. "Let them all come." And he helped her from her horse, and bade her kneel, the knights forming a semicircle around the king, watching him raise Excalibur. He dubbed her right shoulder, and then her left, conferring Elund to be a led of Gwalod. Elund had equaled Lancelot's dream, of Knight of Camelot. Arthur took her hand and helped her to her feet, and she joined his men, riding between Gawain and Merlin back to the castle.